Hi, my name is Jennifer Logue with Rock on Philly, and I'm here at Fox Rothschild with entertainment lawyer extraordinaire, Lori Landew. How's it going, Lori?
It's going great. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us here in our office. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's so cool to be here, actually.
Well, we're happy to have you. Thank you.
Awesome. So, I have a few questions for you talking about your legal career and in the entertainment industry. I mean, you've done so many cool things. It's really awesome that you're here in Philadelphia and that you're a valuable resource to musicians in the area. So let's start off with your background. Did you always know you wanted to be a lawyer?
I did not always know I wanted to be a lawyer, although everybody who knew me growing up said I should be a lawyer because I had a big mouth and I like to argue with people, and I was constantly trying to outthink people around me. So for most of my young life, I was sort of inundated with this sense of I should be a lawyer, even though I didn't even know what that was. But I really wanted to be a singer. That was where where my sort of entertainment dreams started, and then eventually I gave up on being a singer and decided that I would stay attached to the music through being a lawyer.
That's so cool. So where did you go to law school?
I went to Columbia Law School in New York, and then I went to college here in Philadelphia at Penn.
Very cool. So let's talk about your focus on music, sports, and entertainment industry. What made you, I know you said you wanted to be a singer, is there anything else that inspired you to focus on this sector of law?
Yeah, I mean, on the music and entertainment side, certainly it was the fact that I like being around people who are artists. I mean, my heart was always in the music. That's really sort of my sweet spot and where my passion is, and certainly creative people. And I derive a lot of energy from people who are musicians and who are creative, and that was really what led me to try and find a way where law and the arts could come together. The sports thing just sort of came about because there's certain aspects to that business that are also creative, particularly on the marketing and branding side, and that just was sort of a natural fit with everything else I was doing.
Oh, very cool. So we had that little phone go off. Things are very busy here at Fox Rothschild. So because Rock on Philly is all about music, we're going to dive headfirst into the music area of your practice. And I read in your bio that you were the vice president of Zamba Records for business development. What was that like? I mean, that was a great time for music, I think, the whole Zamba era.
It was amazing, actually. When I went to Zamba, which I'm going to reveal how old I am, but it was 1992 that I went there. And at the time that I went there, Zamba and Jive Records was a small rap and hip hop label. That's what it was. And it was my first job going there was clearing samples on hip hop records. So I had a real education right from the beginning in urban hip hop music and just the world of licensing relating to that. And then the label decided to expand and get into pop music. And so the first big act that I worked on in terms of their deal was the Backstreet Boys. And then from there it was Britney, and then from there NSYNC, and then the rest was sort of history for that label. And I was there for almost 10 years, working with all of those artists. And then also they had a huge R&B presence, R. Kelly and Joe, among others. And in the hip hop world, obviously, and rap always was a huge part of their business. So I had a chance to really be with artists who today would be considered old school, but back then were really sort of the ones who were just setting the trends and really creating the market for West Coast and East Coast rap music. So it was a great time to be there, and it's a great family. It was an independent label, and we all had a great time.
That's really interesting. Do you have any crazy stories from back in the Zamba days? Like, just something kind of interesting, out of the ordinary?
I have many, but the ones that stand out. I mean, one, and I probably shouldn't mention the artists, but there was one time when one of our artists was not happy with his deal, and he was a very successful artist, and he came into the office and decided to remove all of the gold records that were on the wall. He literally just went throughout the office and just started pulling them down and left with them, and then came back to let us know that he had planted a bomb someplace in the office, which this is pre 9/11, but still scary nonetheless, and not knowing if it was true or not. And There were decisions that had to be made in terms of whether or not we were going to hang around and see if he was actually capable of this. And like many artists, he was a little high strung. So it was not beyond the realm of possibility that he could do something crazy. So that was one. And we had others where it was not unusual for artists to show up at meetings with various weapons and ammunition, and would let you know that they had them as you were trying to negotiate. Which adds a little level of different kind of leverage than where you normally would get when they're there. But for the most part, people were great. For the most part, our artists were amazing and very professional and wonderful to deal with. But it was an interesting time.
Cool, different cultures, So it seems like a big part of your career was spent in New York. What prompted your move to Philadelphia?
I am from New York originally, so that's really what led me back there. For law school and then to stay. And I really imagined and assumed that I would always be there. I really never thought I would leave. And then it was really 9/11, which was the thing that had me and my husband start thinking about our quality of life and ways we wanted to live, and whether or not New York was really the place we wanted to be. New York is amazing. It's great. I still work there, and do a lot there. But it was not so much because of what happened in New York, but it was really a moment of time where we took a step back and said, are we living the life we want to live in the way we want to live it? And we felt that from a quality of life standpoint, we could do better and we could live better someplace else. And we started looking around and we started thinking, where else could we go? And as an entertainment lawyer, there weren't a lot of choices. I mean, there were certain obvious choices, LA, Nashville, but they weren't necessarily right for us for other reasons. And then a job opened up with Rykodisc and the Ryko Corporation here in Philly. And my husband and I had both gone to school here, and we had a lot of friends here, and we love Philadelphia. And we said, you know what, let's go. Let's see what it's like. And that's what brought us here, and that was 12 years ago. And we've made our life here, and our kids have grown up here, and it's just worked out really well.
Very cool. Now, Rykodisc sounds so familiar. I'm going to go off a little bit. But what did that company do?
So Rykodisc, it was a multi-dimensional company. It had a label, it had a music publishing company, a distribution company, an international operation. It was another incredible independent music company. The history of Ryko is that it was the first CD-only label when it began, which, if you can imagine, at the time that it began, which was the 1980s, that was considered new technology. And a lot of artists and labels were willing to give up those digital rights. That's what digital was considered at the time. And that's how it began. And it built its brand on that. But it was really known for doing high-quality music with incredible artists. So Frank Zappa, his entire catalog was with Ryko. Elvis Costello did a bunch of different projects with Ryko. Joe Jackson, when I was there, worked with us. And it came to be known, although we developed a lot of new artists, it really became sort of a legacy artist kind of label. And then on top of that, we distributed music for other music companies. So the opportunity for us to take developing labels and others and bring them in and get them national distribution.
Then it was acquired by Warner. But you were based in Philadelphia with Ryko.
So Ryko was again ahead of its time in a lot of ways, because when it started, it had the principals in the company lived in different cities, and none of them wanted to move, basically. So for example, the creative guy was in Massachusetts, the distribution guy was in Minnesota, the business guy was in Pennsylvania. And then eventually the distribution guy moved to New York, but it existed in all these different locations, and people communicated then by phone and by fax, because email didn't even exist at that point. But that was how it was always built, and it was built on having different, interesting people in different places, very specialized people. And so the Arthur Mann, who was one of the founders and was really the business mind behind it, was here in Pennsylvania and in Philadelphia. And so when the company was going through some transitions and changing some things around, he brought people here to be with him, and that's how the hub, and that's how I ended up, at least the business hub. Creative hub was someplace else, distribution hub still remains someplace else, and that's how I came to be part of the company back in 2002. But it was great. I mean, it was a great place. It was a great, it was really did phenomenal work, very high quality, really always very well respected by the creative community. And then eventually, as these things happen, there came a time that they decided it was time to move on, and that's when they sold to Warner Music, and that's when I left and went into private practice.
And you came here to Fox?
No, first I did my own thing for a little while. I had my own practice and started my own little entity, which is something I'd always wanted to do. And then 2008 came around, and the economy fell apart, and I decided it was probably a better idea to become part of something more stable and predictable. And with one brief stop at another law firm, which I didn't love, I came to Fox. And Fox was building an incredible entertainment practice. They had a West Coast presence. Daryl Miller, who is my partner out on the West Coast, who's a phenomenal entertainment lawyer, and he had started things off there, and then they were looking for somebody on the East Coast to pick up what he was doing and to give that bi-coastal presence, and that's what brought me here. And then since then, which was it's about 3 years ago, we've built up the practice. We now have 13 full-time entertainment lawyers who devote everything to entertainment on the West Coast and the East Coast, New York, here, and in LA. And it's been great. I mean, the firm's great and the people are great.
Awesome. So good to know that we have this resource here in Philadelphia. Rock on. So talking about Philly now, from your perspective, what are some defining characteristics of the Philly music scene?
Sure. Well, I think, among other things, one of the really defining things about Philly is that it's very welcoming in terms of the music scene, in terms of the different kinds of artists who come through here. The city really wants creative people, and so it tries to find ways to support what they're doing as much as it can. And it's very eclectic. I mean, you have people who have been here forever. You have people who are growing up new. You have people coming here for school, who are both from music school and for other schools that are really very interested in music or performing. So it's very just varied in terms of the offerings. It's got a great scene in terms of clubs and places you can go. Venues are all over the place and really fit all price points and all kinds of interests. So what I love about it is that and then you have the orchestra. I mean, it really is every place. So, it really suits all tastes and interests. It's just a question of people going out and actually finding what they like.
Finding it, making it easy to find.
Rock on Philly is
Rock
so
on
awesome.
Philly. Yay. So that's what you like about the city. Is there anything from your standpoint that could use some improving with our music scene?
I think there's anything and everybody and everything can stand some improvement. Just that's how we all are. But one of my frustrations sometimes, and I'm part of, for example, the Recording Academy, the Grammy organization, is that it's hard for different groups to get together and to connect. And there tends to be little silos. The jazz people hang out with the jazz people, and the rock people are with the rock people, and classical does their own thing. And right, exactly. And it's there's so much talent, and there's so many shared experiences and interests, and it would be so amazing to bring more of those people together. And certainly, everybody needs everybody else. I mean, everybody needs session musicians. Everybody needs collaborators. Everybody needs producers. And I should say, going back to the music scene in Philly, what's so great is we have incredible producers here and incredible studios also, which is another great thing about our city. But it's a matter of getting people to kind of open up, and really be open to other kinds of music, and in terms of experiencing it for themselves, and then also other kinds of musicians, and really getting to know each other that way.
More collaboration between the different subsets.
More collaboration, more communication, more mutual appreciation. I think it would be something that would help to grow the industry generally that's here.
Yeah, no, I agree. You're right on the money with that. Where do you see the Philly music scene in 10 years?
I think it's only getting better. And I think it's, among other things, I think people are starting to recognize Philly as a great place to come, even if they're not from here, right, and to stay and establish themselves and become, bigger fishes in our slightly smaller pond. So I think that that I hope, at least, and I think it's really possible, that people will start seeing Philly as a place to come and stay as musicians, and and to build their careers here. Which doesn't mean you can't go other places and obviously tour and do wonderful things, but to see this as a supportive home for what they're doing, and I think that that's happening more and more. I think especially as a lot of other cities that are more well known for their music scenes are becoming increasingly expensive and complicated for various reasons, that people will start to realize that we're a really good alternative in terms of being, it's a major town. It's got all the hubs, airports, trains, you name it. Great industry, fabulous housing, great neighborhoods. I mean, there's so much here for people. That's where I think it's going, or where I hope it's going to go in 10 years. And I think beyond that, it's going to be, I think it's the venues that are here. I think it's going to just continue to have, there was a time where there was a feeling that the city can only support a few performance venues. And I think what's become clear in the last couple years, and will continue to happen, is that the more people come here and enjoy live music, the more room there is for people. And it's one of those, as the tide rises, everybody will rise with it. And I think it's going to start attracting, especially as our food scene and everything else that's going on here culturally develops, that music will come along with that.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's incredible to see how far we've come just the past few years, Who are some of your favorite local artists right now?
Well, I have a lot. And I have to be careful because I don't want to offend anybody, particularly clients. But I tend to be, my own personal taste in music is more singer-songwriter. Okay. So, among others, I really like Andrew Lipke and Mutlu.
Love Mutlu.
And who else? Oh, I've been listening lately to this very cool guy who calls himself Zeke the Experience, who's an R&B kind of out there performer, kind of a little performance arty, a little, just an R&B singer. But there's a lot of good stuff. There's a lot going on. And, my challenge is always trying to keep up, which is actually not easy.
I can't keep up. My inbox exploded. It's there's so much going on. There's so many talented musicians. It's just...
And those that are from here and those that are coming here. So it's an exciting time.
Definitely. How about some of your favorite national artists?
So kind of in the same vein, I'm a big Jason Mraz fan. And I like a lot of mainstream kind of stuff too, which Imagine Dragons I like, and I like Springsteen will always have a very special place in my heart. But it's all over. I listen to a lot of different kinds of music. Oh, somebody just turned me on to this group, and I think they call themselves Luscious. Have you heard them? It's a girl group. They're out of Brooklyn, actually, and they do some very, very interesting poppy kinds of music. Have a real 60s sort of look to them, but the music is kind of more cutting edge, so it's neat. So I would recommend them as somebody to check out.
Yeah, I'll check them out. Luscious. They sound familiar. I may have bumped into them somewhere earlier on in their career. So, all right, now we're going to talk about advice for up-and-coming artists, because I know really well that we all need it. So, if you were speaking to a room of talented, aspiring artists right now, what is the first bit of legal wisdom you would give them?
I would say you have to treat your career like a business, and you really need to approach it that way, and you have to have a strategic plan. I think it doesn't necessarily come naturally to a lot of young artists. They're very creative. They're very passionate about their music, but it's a little hard sometimes to take the step back and try to see how to fit it all together to create a career in what you're doing. Because for most people, the long-term goal is to be able to do something that they love and actually, exactly, and make some money and be able to survive and be able to, be able to support themselves and families along the way. So it's not something that artists necessarily are interested in, or at least they're interested in it theoretically, but not necessarily getting down to the real... The nitty-gritty, exactly. So I would say that's one thing that even if you don't enjoy that aspect of what it is you're doing, it's a good idea to start educating yourself in that respect.
So speaking about education, do you have any good resources for musicians coming up? Like, where can they go to educate themselves? Maybe on a budget.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different resources. I mean, there's certainly, here in Philadelphia, we have the Recording Academy, which is a Grammy organization, and we have panels, and we have people who come through all the time. And I would say it's worth at least checking out. Going on to Grammy.com, Philadelphia, see what's happening. Go on our website, our Facebook page, check that kind of stuff out, because it really is. There's a lot that we try to do. We try to really, in particular, reach out to the do-it-yourself artist who's trying to figure out how to make it all work. So that would be one local resource. There's Donald Passman's book, which is everything about the music business, something like that, which to this day is still one of the best resources out there, and it gets updated periodically. And exactly, and it's written in a language that I think anybody can understand, and it puts a lot of things in perspective, which is always a good thing. So I would recommend that. Certainly these days there's so many blogs and so many websites where people can go and get more information. And then, of course, there's your local lawyer who can always answer questions. Exactly. And we have several we have several great music lawyers in town. So, I'm not the only one. So there's, there's those people who are resources. So, and then there's always going back to school. If you want to learn more about it, there's a lot of music business programs that are out there in case people are interested.
Yeah, a lot of great programs here in Philadelphia as well, which is great. So, what are some common rookie mistakes for up-and-coming musicians? You're just like, oh my God.
No. I mean, it's, there's a lot of common mistakes. I mean, I think probably, and this is not necessarily unique to musicians. This is really just people generally that, people, if they're willing to do agreements at all, and a lot of people are very reluctant sometimes to do agreements and to enter into contractual relationships because they don't want to hurt the personal relationship, right? And there's a certain amount of discomfort that comes along with having to say to somebody, I want to do this a certain way, and I want you to do this, and I'm going to do that, and it sometimes creates a certain sense of maybe I don't trust you, and that's why we have to put it in writing, and that's awkward for people. So that becomes a problem sometimes because people want to really avoid that. People tend to rely a lot on relationships and the view that, we're good friends, we're relatives, we're, whatever it may be. And unfortunately, I've seen repeatedly situations where good relationships sometimes go sour. Exactly. And suddenly you're in a situation where you have to try and figure out on how to unravel that business relationship that needs to be unraveled. Sometimes it comes down to everything is great until there's success. Exactly. And then people, think they're entitled to more than, some people may think they're entitled to more, others think they're entitled to less. Mm-hmm. So that creates issues. So it really is important to try and document what it is from the beginning. And even if you're willing to enter into a contractual relationship, which is always a good first step. The other common mistake is people thinking that they know how to write a contract. Oh. And then what happens is they write it, it makes sense to them, and maybe the two people or more than two people are involved at the time, but because they're not as familiar with how things work in the industry, or maybe it's because they're not as familiar with what certain language may actually mean, or even things as silly as like where you put a comma in a sentence, in terms of what the impact that can have on your relative and respective rights. If they find themselves in a dispute later on, they're surprised to see how those written agreements exactly don't actually say what they think they say. So one of the things that I always recommend to people, if you're going to do it yourself, which is fine, if you want to, especially if you're not in a situation where you can afford an attorney, show it to somebody else. Take it out of the world that the two of you are in that are negotiating, and take it to a friend, take it to a relative, take it to somebody who knows nothing about the deal you're trying to make, and have them read it and see if their interpretation of it is consistent with what you were trying to say. Because that is a good indication of whether or not it actually works. Exactly. And there are, and I should mention, I hadn't mentioned this before, but another resource that's really terrific that we have in town here is the Pennsylvania Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts, PVLA, which for a lot of developing artists is a great resource in terms of getting really quality legal assistance, but not having to pay the rates that lawyers charge.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, definitely go there, guys, if you have any big contracts you're going to be getting into. So, with the changing landscape of the music industry, back in my day, the goal was always to get signed, to get signed by a major label. Now that that's changed a bit, what should a goal for up-and-coming artists be now? I mean, if it's not to get signed right away, I mean, where should their focus be?
Obviously the focus always has to start with the music, so making great music and creating the relationships that are really going to enable you to continue making that music. So I think, people sometimes forget how important it is to reach out outside of their own circle, and start, meeting other writers and producers and others who could be instrumental, to you. Because keeping in mind that as people we evolve, our music changes, our music evolves, our interests, our tastes, whether it's as consumers or as creators. So it's important to really keep that circle as wide as it can be. So that's one thing. Obviously, it all starts with the music. And then beyond that, it's about being comfortable playing out. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to be able to perform live, and really to hone those skills, and to be, whether you're with your own band or with a backing band, to really be synchronized and polished and tight. Exactly. I mean, that just makes such a difference in terms of how you're going to be perceived. And that just comes from playing a lot, playing out a lot and playing a lot, which is not always easy, when you have to support yourself doing other things. We all know, but the more you can, the better it is. And then, try and travel and try and get into other cities. You have to build slowly but surely. You got to build that buzz, and that whether you're doing it online, which helps obviously, and working all your social networks, but it's also important to really be there, and to go to the place. I always say, put your face in the place. You got to get to wherever it is, to get people to know you.
Be in the real world. I mean, I feel like social media can't exist on its own. Like, you have to have that real life experience to make it matter, So yeah, well, thank you so much for interviewing with us. This is really informative for me.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for putting up with our crazy lighting situation, and among other things. But thanks to Rock on Philly. It's a great resource. Everybody should read it. Everybody should frequent it and take what they can from all the great stuff that you guys are doing. So thank you for including me and my firm, and we're excited that we can be a part of what you're doing.
Yeah, we just want to educate musicians about this business side, the legal side of the business as well, and let them know that there are resources here in Philadelphia. You just got to go out there and use them. So
great. Thank you, Jennifer.